John Wayne found out his crew destroyed a young farmer's only tractor. The farmer refused his money, and what Wayne did instead changed everything.
We could help you get back on your feet. I appreciate the offer, mister, but I'll handle this myself.
The summer of 1955 was brutally hot in West Texas, the kind of heat that turned the earth to cracked leather and made men question every decision that had brought them to this particular patch of ground. The production crew for Blood Alley had been scouting locations for 3 weeks, moving equipment across land that stretched endlessly toward a horizon that never seemed to get any closer. Tom Calvert's farm sat on 340 acres of hard-won Texas soil, 20 miles outside of Brackettville. 3 generations of Calverts had worked this land, coaxing wheat and grain from earth that didn't give anything without a fight. Tom was 29 years old, recently married, with a 4-month-old son named Bobby sleeping in a crib inside the farmhouse his grandfather had built with his own hands. The farm's most valuable asset, the thing that stood between the Calvert family and genuine hardship, was a 1952 John Deere tractor that Tom had spent 4 years saving to buy. It wasn't just a machine. It was the difference between a harvest and a catastrophe, between making the mortgage payment and losing everything 3 generations had built. When the production company's location manager had approached Tom 6 weeks earlier about using the edge of his property for background shots, Tom had agreed, reassured by the contracts and the promised compensation for any disruption. He had shaken hands with men in suits and taken them at their word, because that's what you did in Texas in 1955. But the most shocking thing was what happened on the 3rd day of filming. An equipment truck, backing up to reposition for an afternoon shot, misjudged the terrain in the fading light. The driver didn't see the tractor parked behind the barn until the impact had already happened. The crunch of metal meeting metal carried across the flat Texas landscape with the clarity that only open country can produce. Tom heard it from inside the farmhouse. He came through the back door at a run and stopped dead when he saw what had happened. The John Deere was on its side, the front axle bent at an angle that told him everything he needed to know before he got close enough to confirm it. The engine block was cracked. The hydraulic system was destroyed. 4 years of savings, the heartbeat of his operation, was lying in the Texas dirt like a broken promise. The production crew gathered around with the guilty discomfort of men who knew they had caused serious harm. The location manager was already on the phone, his voice low and apologetic. Someone offered Tom a cigarette. He refused it without speaking. This is where everything changed. Word reached John Wayne that evening at the hotel in Brackettville where the production was staying. He was in his room reviewing the next day's schedule when his producer knocked on the door and delivered the news with the practiced efficiency of a man who had managed difficult situations before. "One of our trucks hit a farmer's tractor this afternoon. The machine is totaled. We're handling the compensation paperwork." Wayne set down his schedule. "How bad?" "The tractor is a complete loss. The farmer seems—" The producer paused, searching for the right word. "Shaken." "What's his name?" "Calvert. Tom Calvert. His property borders the location we used today." "How old?" The producer looked surprised by the question. "Young. Late 20s, maybe?" Wayne stood up and reached for his jacket. "Take me out there. Duke, we have lawyers handling this. The insurance—" "Take me out there." They drove in silence through the Texas dark, the headlights cutting a narrow path through the flatness. Tom Calvert was still outside when they arrived, standing near the damaged tractor with his arms crossed, staring at the machine with an expression that Wayne recognized immediately. It was the look of a man calculating losses he couldn't afford. Wayne climbed out of the car and walked across the dirt yard without waiting for introductions. He stopped a few feet from Tom and looked at the tractor for a long moment before speaking. "I'm John Wayne. My crew did this." Tom looked at him. In the dim light from the farmhouse windows, his face was carefully controlled, the way men in hard circumstances learn to control their faces. "I know who you are. I'm sorry about your equipment. Are you?" It wasn't a question. Wayne noted the flatness in Tom's voice and understood it. "I'd like to replace it." "Hold on, don't miss this detail." Tom Calvert turned to face Wayne fully. He was a lean, sun-darkened young man with hands that showed every hour of work they'd performed, and eyes that had the particular clarity of someone who has never had the luxury of self-deception. "I don't want your money, Mr. Wayne." The producer, standing behind Wayne, shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the response the contracts and insurance paperwork were designed to handle. "It's not charity," Wayne said. "Your equipment was destroyed by my operation. Replacing it is the right thing. I understand that, and I'm telling you I don't want it. Can I ask why?" Tom was quiet for a moment. Behind him, through the farmhouse window, a light moved through the kitchen. His wife, Wayne guessed, managing a 4-month-old and trying not to watch whatever was happening outside. "My grandfather built this farm," Tom said finally. "My father kept it. I've been working it since I was old enough to hold a tool. Everything here came from Calvert hands. Every fence post, every acre under cultivation. That tractor." He looked at the damaged machine. "I saved for 4 years to buy it. I'm not going to replace it with Hollywood money. That's not how this farm works." Wayne studied him for a long moment. He had met proud men before. He had been one himself, in circumstances that weren't entirely different from what Tom Calvert was describing. "I respect that," Wayne said. "I don't need your respect either, Mr. Wayne. I need my tractor." The most dangerous moment was yet to come. Wayne nodded slowly. He looked at the tractor one more time, then at the farmhouse, then at Tom Calvert. "All right," he said simply. He turned and walked back to the car. The producer followed, confused by the brevity of the exchange. "That's it?" the producer said quietly as they drove away. "He refused and we're just leaving?" "We're leaving," Wayne said. "We're not done." What happened next, nobody on the production knew about until much later. The following morning, Wayne made 3 phone calls before breakfast. The first was to a John Deere dealership in San Antonio. The second was to the foreman of a construction company he had worked with on a previous film. The third was to a man named Gerald Hutchins, who operated a farm equipment operation outside of Austin and owed Wayne a favor from a business arrangement 2 years earlier. Wayne didn't offer to buy Tom Calvert a tractor. Tom had refused that. What Wayne arranged instead was something that Tom couldn't refuse, because Tom would never know it was happening. It's hard to believe, but within a week of the incident, a barely used 1954 John Deere tractor appeared at the Bracketville Equipment Auction House, consigned anonymously, priced at exactly $40, which was the registration fee minimum. The auction listing, distributed through the normal channels, reached Tom Calvert the same way it reached every farmer in the county. Tom attended the auction because he attended every equipment auction within driving distance. He was looking for something he could afford, something that might get him through the harvest season while he rebuilt his savings. He was the only bidder on the 1954 John Deere. He drove it home that afternoon with the particular satisfaction of a man who has solved his own problem through his own efforts, which was exactly what he had done, as far as he knew. The production of Blood Alley moved to its next location. John Wayne never mentioned the auction to anyone connected to the film. The producer assumed the matter had been settled through normal insurance channels. The lawyers filed their paperwork and moved on. Tom Calvert harvested his wheat that fall with a tractor that ran better than the one he'd lost. Don't miss what happened next. Life on the Calvert farm continued as it always had, shaped by seasons and weather and the endless negotiation between human effort and Texas soil. Bobby Calvert grew up watching his father work with the focused dedication of a man who understood exactly what he was preserving and why. But Bobby had his mother's imagination and his father's determination, and what he imagined wasn't wheat fields. From the time he was old enough to understand what movies were, he was fascinated by how they were made, by the machinery of storytelling, by the invisible architecture that turned ideas into images. Tom watched his son's interest with the quiet attention of a father who knows better than to interfere with what a person is called toward. He never talked about the night John Wayne had come to the farm. It wasn't a story he told. It was a night he had filed away under the category of things that had happened and been dealt with, which was the only category Tom Calvert maintained. Bobby left for Los Angeles in 1971, 20 years old and carrying the particular confidence of someone raised by people who never made promises they couldn't keep. He started at the bottom of the film industry, doing the kind of work that nobody notices until it doesn't get done. He was reliable, creative, and possessed of a judgment about stories and people that seemed to come from somewhere beyond his years. He crossed paths with John Wayne's production company in 1973. By then, Wayne was in the final phase of his career, still working, still commanding screens with the authority of a man who had made that space his own over 40 years. He needed a young producer with good instincts and better judgment. Bobby Calvert was recommended by 3 people whose opinions Wayne trusted. Their first meeting lasted 4 hours. Wayne hired him before the afternoon was over. For 2 years, Bobby worked closer to Wayne than almost anyone else in the production. He learned the business from the inside, developing the skills and relationships that would define his career for decades. Wayne trusted his judgment in the way that he trusted very few people's judgment, completely and without reservation. One evening, late in 1974, they were reviewing a project together when Wayne mentioned, almost incidentally, that he had done location work in West Texas back in the 50s. Brackettville area, Wayne said. Beautiful country, hard country. Bobby looked up from the papers in front of him. My family's from near there. My father has a farm outside Brackettville. Wayne was quiet for a moment. Calvert, he said. Is your father Tom Calvert? Yes. Bobby was surprised. You know him? Wayne looked at the papers on the desk. We met once, a long time ago. He paused. How's the farm? Good. My father still runs it. He's stubborn as the land itself. Bobby smiled. He always said the farm survives everything because Calverts don't accept help from anyone. That sounds right, Wayne said. He didn't say anything else about it. Bobby noticed the slight shift in his expression, the brief quality of a man remembering something specific, but didn't press. Wayne had a way of closing certain subjects that made further questions feel unnecessary. It was only after Wayne died in 1979 that Bobby began to understand. Going through some of Wayne's personal files as part of the estate process, Bobby found a brief notation in Wayne's handwriting, dated August 1955. It was a list of 3 names and phone numbers with a single line beneath them. Calvert Farm, Brackettville. Auction arranged, J.D. 1954, $40 minimum. Bobby sat with that piece of paper for a long time. He drove to Brackettville the following weekend and found his father in the field he had worked for 50 years. Tom was 73 years old and moved with the careful deliberateness of a man whose body had recorded every hour of labor it had ever performed. Bobby showed him the notation. Tom read it twice. He looked at it for a long time without speaking. Then he looked out at the field and at the tractor, a different machine now, upgraded through years of better seasons, but descended in a direct line from that $40 auction purchase in 1955. Stubborn old Duke, Tom said finally. Did you know? No. Tom folded the paper carefully, but I should have wondered more about that auction. He was quiet. Only bidder on a machine that good at that price. Should have wondered. Are you angry? Tom thought about it with the honesty that had defined every assessment he had ever made. No. He found a way to do it right. Didn't take away my pride, just made sure I had what I needed. He handed the paper back to Bobby. That's harder than just writing a check. Takes more thought, more respect for another man's dignity. Bobby looked at the notation in his father's handwriting. He never said a word. 2 years I worked with him and he never said a word. No, Tom said. He wouldn't. He turned back to the field. That's the difference between a man who does good things and a man who does good things to feel good about himself. Bobby Calvert went on to produce 17 films over the following 2 decades. He was known throughout the industry for the same qualities that had made his father a respected figure in Brackettville: reliability, judgment, and a complete absence of pretension. When people asked how he had gotten his start, he told them about John Wayne. He told them about a notation in a dead man's handwriting and a $40 tractor at an auction that had no business being priced so low. He told them about a man who had been refused when he offered the obvious solution, and who had responded not with frustration or indifference, but with the patience to find a solution that preserved everyone's dignity. The lesson, Bobby would say, wasn't about the tractor. It was about understanding what people actually need versus what you want to give them. Wayne could have forced a check on my father and called it square. Instead, he thought about who my father was and found a way to help him that fit who he was. And your father never knew until the end. That was the point. The best help is the kind that lets people believe they solved their own problem. Because in a way, they did. My father found that tractor. He bid on it. He drove it home. All Wayne did was make sure it was there to be found. Bobby paused, the way he always paused at this point in the story. That's not charity. That's respect. And in 40 years of this business, I've never seen anyone do it better. What would you have done in Wayne's position? Sometimes real generosity means finding a way to help that preserves the other person's pride completely. Share your thoughts below.